Representatives of the 32 nations participating in the 2018 FIFA World Cup are in Moscow ahead of the group stages draw. The usual names are in the mix: Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, South Korea, Germany, Spain and England. Italy are notably absent, while Iceland and Panama will be making their debuts. African sides Senegal, Egypt, Tunisia, Nigeria and Morocco will be keen to see which teams they are paired with. Tunisia's coach says he has no preference and is just happy his team have made it to Russia 2018.
I have no expectations for the draw really. I'm just happy we qualified for the World Cup. There are first, second, third and fourth classifications and we're in the third group. There's some very strong teams in the first and second rankings. So the best we can do in Russia is honor Tunisian football by doing our best. Because honestly, if teams are in the World Cup, it means they are all good and we can't worry too much about who will get in the draw.
Well, let's get you some more on that draw and Africa's prospects. I'm joined in the studio by sports consultant Arnold Kanyangonda. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you very much for coming in. So there are going to be some tough groups. Which teams do you think will Africa's representatives want to avoid?
Well, I mean, going into the draw, the teams have been split into 4 pots, so we know which teams could meet whom and which teams could play whom. And so for Africa, if you start with perhaps Africa's best team going into the World Cup, Egypt, they have the possibility of meeting Brazil. Now, by my reckoning, Brazil is one of the favorites next to Germany to win this, so Egypt will want to avoid them. And then you've got Nigeria. Nigeria could possibly meet in any of Denmark, Spain and Germany. All countries they've played Spain and Denmark at the World Cup before. Actually, they played Spain and Denmark in '98, beating Spain in a memorable match before being thrashed by Denmark. And they'll definitely want to avoid those teams. But most of all, they do not want to meet my hot favorites for the World Cup, Germany. Now, the other 3 teams, Morocco, Tunisia and Senegal, could all possibly meet yet another favorite, their former colonial master, France. So on the one hand, for footballing reasons, they don't want to play France, obviously because France is very strong. But also, they might want to play them. Senegal has got good memories of playing France, are the only other World Cup they played in. Tunisia and Morocco might want to put one up again on their former colonial master. And of course, Morocco has got history because one of France's greatest players played for France because Morocco was not yet free. So, you know, they get the feeling that Jules Fontaine, the player I'm referring to, was Moroccan, played for France, and a lot of players from these countries also play for France. So it's going to be a battle between brothers, except that France is the big, stronger brother in this case.
Well, of the 5 African teams, only Nigeria competed in the last World Cup. Does that give the Super Eagles an edge, do you think, in Russia?
A little bit. I mean, there's no substitute for big tournament experience, especially considering that Nigeria hasn't done as well in the African Cup of Nations since that time. And a lot of the players who will play in Russia, or who could possibly play in Russia, played at the World Cup. There is no substitute for that experience, being at a big tournament, the biggest tournament in the world. So that gives them a bit of an edge. But more than that, I think Nigeria will actually probably do better than they did last time, better than they've ever done.
Why is that?
By getting into the quarterfinals, simply because they went through qualification almost perfectly. They seem almost impossible to beat. I mean, very few teams in Africa can beat them. They have a strong team, they've got a solid team, but most of all, for the first time in as long as I can remember, the Nigerian team is humble. They've got their feet on the ground. And remember, they've been playing at the youth tournaments and doing well. At the last Olympics, they finished 3rd despite difficulty. And if you usually want a barometer of how teams are going to the World Cup, you look at the Under-20 World Cup, and then you look at the most recent Olympics.
So we've got to watch out for Nigeria. No African team has ever reached a World Cup semi-final. What do you think the chances are this time?
Very good, actually. Because at the last World Cup, for the first time ever, 2 African teams went into the round of 16. That was Nigeria and Algeria. Algeria, unfortunately, self-destructed and not there at the tournament this time. Now, Nigeria then is going in, building on the back of that. And it's been coming for a while. Remember, it took a narrowly missed penalty shot at the 2010 World Cup for Ghana to miss out on the semi-finals. And I do feel that 3 of the African teams, Senegal, Egypt especially, and Nigeria are particularly strong. And I'll underline Egypt as possibly the strongest African team going because they've missed the World Cup for 28 years. In that time, they've won the African Cup of Nations 4 times. They've for years been Africa's best team, and I've always felt that going into the World Cup, if Egypt makes it to a World Cup, they could possibly become very strong favourites for going to the semis.
So, obviously everyone's going to be watching to find out who is likely to do well in Russia. Is there anybody that we should be keeping an eye out for, do you think?
You mean players, right?
Players.
Yeah, I have 3 players in mind. The first one is a player who's playing at what might be his last World Cup, John Mikel Obi. Remember, as recently as a dozen years ago, he was rated higher than Lionel Messi. He was an attacking midfielder, changed to a defensive midfielder at Chelsea, and that essentially took him out of the reckoning for one of the world's best players. But in terms of talent, Africa has seen few like him before. And as the captain of Nigeria now, I look for him to do well. And then, of course, you've got the 2 superstars of the English Premier League at Liverpool, Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah. I think they will have breakout tournaments. And all told, because of their leadership, because of how they play and the players around them, Egypt and Senegal will likely have the best World Cups an African country has ever had.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Arnold Kanyangonda, sports consultant. Thank you very much for coming in, giving us your thoughts of what's likely to happen in Russia. Thank you.